All right, everyone. Welcome back to Uprooted, where we talk about all things faith and mental health. I am your host, Matoke Adewale, marriage and family therapist, bringing you all the things faith and mental health. I hope everyone has been doing well and taking care of yourselves. Thank you again for joining me on this episode. And today we have a very, very special guest who I just want to say, if you're not following her on Instagram, by the time you get to the end of this episode, you're going to ask yourself, what was I doing with myself? I'm going to need to follow her right now. I've been really inspired, by her page, just because she talks a lot about relationships, but more in particular, like your relationship that you're building with yourself and how that can translate, with how you relate with other people when it comes to like romantic relationships, friendship, and just being able to sustain that in a healthy manner. So let's welcome Imani. Let's give her a warm, uprooted welcome. Imani, thank you so much for being here today. Really, really, really appreciate it. First, why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself and just what you're doing, what you're up to, and just a little bit about you.
Yeah. So my name is Imani. I am the content creator behind Imani Tutt. I am a marriage and family therapist. So I specialize in working with families and couples and the whole shebang. Outside of just my content creating and therapy, I really just kind of like to spend a lot of time in solitude, doing a lot of reading, listening to podcasts, being able to really just spend a lot of time alone. I think like this is the perfect time for me to do that.
So you're an introvert. You're an introvert? Would you say you're an introvert?
I think I'm like a splash of both.
Yeah, isn't that ambivert, something like that?
Yeah, something. I'm like somewhere in the middle. When I was younger, I was very quiet because I took on the role as kind of like the observer. Mm-hmm. So it's just like, but as I got older and I've learned to like speak up for myself and like be more assertive and stuff, I feel like I'm somewhere in the middle. But in terms of like what I truly like to do, I like to spend a lot of time just alone, reading, playing with my dog, listening to music. I probably sound like a grandma.
No, I'm the same way.
Value that. I really do value alone time. And it was so funny. I was just talking to one of my friends earlier about how solitude is like literally just so essential for all of us to do.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's pretty much what I do. I do also like to sing. I'm a shower singer. I'm my washcloths and my towels, they're my audience.
Yes.
I'm Beyonce behind like all this.
Everybody sounds good in the shower.
Yeah, it gives you that I don't even know what it's called.
Acoustics.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. Yeah, it just gives you that sound that you need. So outside of that, that's pretty much what I like to do.
I'm sorry, I cut you off earlier. You were saying you graduated, and then I cut you off. My bad.
Mm-hmm. I graduated from Hofstra University back in December. So right now I'm still an associate marriage and family therapist. Starting next month, I'm going to be really diving into my studies so I can study for like the state exam and everything. So just this being a part of my journey, and I'm still just in the beginning of my journey. Like it amazes me all the time because I feel like I've already accomplished like so many different things and I just started.
Just the tip of the iceberg, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, you've shared some fun facts kind of about you. Any other like fun facts or identities that are important to you that you want to share?
I think for the most part, that was pretty much it. Besides me kind of just like cracking jokes and stuff and just like dancing around like randomly. That's pretty much what I like to do. And I've also actually have been trying to take more time away and travel. I'm very young. I don't have any major responsibilities yet. Yet. So I want to take this time to really just like see at least as much as I can. I think that that's really important. The world is so much bigger than what the space or the community that you're in. There's so much to see, different cultures to kind of like learn about. So I've been trying to get more into that. I'm going to DR next week. So that's going to be fun.
That's fun. Look at you. That's dope. You make a great point. There's so much that we can embrace like in our singleness in terms of like before marriage and before like kids that a lot of people don't tap into, you know, like I don't have time for it. But then by the time you know it, life just keeps going by, and then you don't have time to do the things that you had like planned. So that's a great point.
I try to just do all that stuff. I remember when the first place that I went to was the Bahamas, and my parents were like freaking out. They're like, "Oh my God, like how could you spend all this money on this trip? Like you're working and you're doing this and you're doing that." But it just had me kind of see it in a way of like, just look at the mindset. Like my parents got married when they were like 23. So it was like instantly, we got to go into survival mode and be able to provide, you know, food and shelter for ourselves. And then also a baby, well, 2 years later, but also a baby. So they weren't thinking about like doing things for themselves. Now, as millennials, we're getting married a little bit later. So we have all this space and time to do it. So it's like, why not indulge?
Yes, that is very, very, very true. And you make a good point, like as millennials, right? Because our generation is so different than a lot of our like parents, and the way that they see things, and the way that their perspectives on what's priority, what's not, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so
exactly.
That's a great point. Well, I feel like we kind of segue there, but welcome. Thank you for, and it's okay because that's what we do here. I'm
definitely a seguer oftentimes.
Yeah, we go with what's happening, right? Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. And I wanted us to talk a little bit, you know, just about first, like, I want to ask you what mental wellness means to you. Because I asked people that because I feel like everyone's like on a different path, you know, in their journey, in their life journey, in their experiences, even though I feel like that word is thrown around a lot. I think it means different things to different people. And it's so important for people to hear the stories and the perspective of other people, because you don't know what you don't know, you know, until you know it. And then you hear, you know, someone else's perspective, and you can kind of take that or relate it to your own or just whatever. Right. So for you, like when you hear mental wellness, like what does that mean to you?
So when I think about mental wellness, I think about just like wellness overall. I am a firm believer that your mind, your body, and your soul, they're all connected. So if one of those things are off, then it's kind of going to like throw everything else out of whack. So they're all like literally together. You can't have one without the other. So I think when we're talking about wellness, it's more so this sense of like being well. And a lot of the times it doesn't have to be like, oh, I have a cold or I've fallen ill, so now I'm not well. Like, yeah, physically, but like, what about everything else? Like emotionally, mentally, spiritually, like, what is that for you? And what space do you have to be in your life to say, like, I feel well, I feel at peace, I feel like I have some type of substance or abundance here. So that's more than kind of just like what's presented on the outside, which I think is what a lot of social media projects, like making sure that you're taking all of these like, baths and like indulging in all these things. But that's what it is. It's indulgence. It's not, it's great because we can do it for luxury entertainment, like just something. We all want to have fun, but it's just so important that overall you feel well.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And the word that kept coming to my mind as you're describing that is balance. Yeah. Right. A balance between all of those areas, because you do have people, especially in the social media world, where, you know, they are doing like the yoga and like the meditation, and they're eating healthy, they're exercising, but inside and emotionally in their relationships, in their family, it's all messed up. There's no, it's like out of whack. Right. It's good. Like, it's good to have balance. That was always coming to my mind as you were saying that, to have balance in those areas, because a lot of the times it's hard to get, it's easy to get caught up in life and like the mundane things of life. Just go to work, go home, go to sleep, go to work, go home, go to sleep. And then we don't really pause, like you were saying earlier about solitude, to like pay attention. How is my body right now? Right. How is my mind? How are my emotions right now? Like, how have I been feeling emotionally all week? Have I been short with people? Have I been having like random irritation, right? Paying attention to that. You talked about the soul too, and our spirit, like spirituality, like how are you dealing with that? So that's a really great point, that balance.
Yeah, it's so important. And I was just telling one of my clients this past week, like they're like, oh yeah, like, I've been saying like all of these positive affirmations and I just feel like it's not working and this, that. And I'm like, well, you can say like all the positive affirmations that you want, but like, what's on the inside is going to spill out on the outside. So if you don't believe what it is that you're saying, you're not living a life that aligns with what it is that you're saying, of course, you're not going to feel like anything's changing. And that's not to sound like condescending or anything, but we just have to be so cognizant of like just our actions and our behaviors and our thought patterns and why we keep ending up to these same spots. So once again, segue.
No, it's good. Like we have to be intentional. Be intentionally aware, right? Like actually pay attention. Like, what are my actions speaking? What are my words speaking? Like, what is it actually showing about how I am internally? Because what's on the inside comes out on the outside, like what you're saying, right? So it's super, super important. So I just really believe that wellness is being able to look at all of those things, take accountability for yourself, and then take action. Yep. Accountability. Yeah. And I feel like as you're speaking, it seems like you're speaking also from experience. So like for you, what has been like your own like mental wellness journey? How would you describe it?
I think it's definitely been a ride. That's kind of what I like. That's what I like to call it. I think that there was a long time that I thought that I was in this space of like confidence and loving myself. And it wasn't until I had gone through like a plethora of relationships as I had gotten older. But then there was this one relationship in particular where it was kind of like a spiritual, almost like awakening, I want to say, going through that relationship. I got to kind of see myself from like outside of myself in a way. And that wasn't until like everything was over. But in terms of like that journey, I really went through a lot of like self-reflecting, a lot of solitude, a lot of just really honing in on how did I get here? How did we get to this point? How did we start allowing these things? Like, and I think that's a part of learning the lesson. And if you don't take the time to do those things, you kind of just end up repeating them. And I was so heartbroken and just miserable. After everything was said and done, I said, I cannot keep doing this. Like, I can't keep running into these people that treat me this way and doing this and doing that. And I found myself kind of like in the beginning, like putting on everybody else, like, oh, everybody else is so mean to me and I'm always giving this love and I never receive anything back. And I'm always doing, I hate myself. Like I was just going until I really kind of just sat down. I started doing some reading. I started listening to a lot of YouTube, following holistic psychology. She's on Instagram. She's very, very good.
Yeah.
And really started working on myself. And that's when I learned so many things about like the ego and the super ego and the id and, just it's so many different things. I can kind of just go off into a tangent, but really kind of just honing in on yourself is something that I was overlooking for so long. Because we hear those messages all the time, like, oh, you gotta love yourself, gotta love yourself, gotta love yourself.
But who am I? And the question is, who am I? Who am I? Who am I loving? Who is this person? That's so true. I mean, I'm sorry to cut you off, but that is so true. Like, it's this awakening of like, okay, I'm supposed to love myself, love yourself, self-care. Right. Who is the self that you're caring for? Who is the self that you're loving? Do we know that person? And it sounds like for you, you had an awakening, like you said, of like looking at yourself in a metaphorical mirror and like, who am I? Like, who have I become? Like, do you recognize yourself? And how do you get back to that? That's a good point. Like really going through that process and kind of like getting to the lowest of the lows. Because I think that's what happens a lot of the times when you do go through like a spiritual awakening and things like that. You kind of have hit like an emotional rock bottom and you just don't even recognize who you are anymore. And it wasn't until I found myself crying in the middle of the street on like the sidewalk where I was just like,
this is out of control. Like, how did you end up getting here? And I think I can laugh about it now because I look back and I see like all of that was a part of my story.
Mm-hmm.
But being able to really just tap into that, because that's not something that's easy. A lot of us shy away from having to revisit childhood, having to revisit a past relationship. We don't want to do that because it's uncomfortable. But I needed to do that to end up where I'm at now.
Yeah, because you get to an uncomfortable place anyway.
Yeah.
You just described sitting on the sidewalk, having a breakdown.
Yeah.
And it's like, why does it have to take that for some of us, for many of us, to wake up, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes like that rock bottom, and that's okay, you know, if that's how we can like grow, right, and heal. But sometimes they're like warning signs before you even get to that place. But because we're not aware of it, you know, we have blind spots on. We don't see it. And then it's not until you're like unrecognizable, like, who am I? How did I get to this place? Then it's like you have a choice, right? Because some people, you know, it's very hard to heal. Let's just put it like that. It's very hard it's very hard to take the pattern that they're in.
Yeah, the pattern that they're in is the trauma. It's like they don't even recognize that they're subconsciously in this pattern of trauma. It feels like home. It feels like what they're used to. So it's like stepping outside of that and saying like, okay, maybe this was the dynamic that I had when I was younger, but that maybe kind of worked in forms of like just me protecting myself when I was 6, but it's not working now at 26.
No.
So something needs to change. And I can't worry about changing all of these outside factors. And he did this to me and she did that to me. I have to worry about myself, because what is it about myself that allowed that stayed in something like that? It's all a reflection of you.
And it's making me think of one of your posts that I don't know when it was, maybe a few weeks ago, where you were pretty much, I'm going to summarize, you're pretty much saying that we need to ask ourselves what role we played in some of these like toxic relationships or situations that we found ourselves, that we find ourselves that hasn't worked, or that, you know, we're burnt out from, or you're emotionally distressed from. Asking yourself, what role did I play? Because a lot of us, we repeat the same relationships. Like I think you probably said something like that before. We repeat the same. we repeat the same relationships with different people.
Yeah,
right? It looks the same. It's the same.
The template is the same. You just plug it in a different person.
You just plug it in something different, right?
Right.
And it made me think of one of your posts where you said that of just we have to. Accountability is so important. You know, and, you know, there's a phrase that we always say, which I find really true, of like, the trauma is not your fault, but the healing is your responsibility. Yeah. Whatever happened to you in your childhood, or the things that you know, gone through, even the bad relationships, like it's not completely your fault, but at some point, like, we have to take responsibility. Like, you can't just keep saying, well, it's because I was raised like this, or it's because this happened, or it's because I can't find anyone good. We can't keep repeating that same cycle and using it as an excuse, or as a crutch, right? At some point, there has to be accountability. And I think that's so connected, like you've been saying, to mental wellness. Like, it's not just all, you know, roses and meditating and yoga and, you know, going to the spa. That is one part of it, and it's good. But I always tell people, like, real self-care is discipline. It takes a lot of work. It's not, sometimes you have to do things that feel outside of you. It feels uncomfortable. It feels different. It feels hard. It feels even worse sometimes, especially also with therapy. Sometimes people enter therapy and they feel like they're worse coming in, or worse being in than they were before they came in. And it's because you're unpacking so much. You're going through so much. So I always tell people, I'm like, it's good if you feel that way. Like, if you walk out of your therapy session and feel good all the time, I'm concerned. Very concerned.
What's actually happening right now? You need that. Like you need those lessons. And it kind of made me think about like when you were saying, like, kind of repeating the same things over and over. And whatever you believe in, like, I believe in God. Some people believe in the universe, a higher power, whatever. But it's kind of like, oh, here's this bar of chocolate, and you know that you're allergic to chocolate, but you eat it anyway. And it's like, oh, well, no, like, here, take this Twix. Now you're eating the Twix. Take this Reese's, knowing that chocolate makes you sick. It's just like, stop.
Yes.
But you have to take a time to put yourself like on the spotlight, like really do like that, that mirror to mirror and really look at yourself and say like, what's going on right now is just completely not okay. I need to be connected to myself because right now I'm real disconnected.
Yeah. And I feel like some people always say, well, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to. And I think one way to start is therapy, right? Yeah. And if you feel like, well, I'm not comfortable talking to someone, like what we're telling you to do right now, these are practical things of like taking a pause. Imani likes to say, sit down somewhere.
Yeah. Sit down.
Sit down somewhere.
Sit down somewhere.
Sit down somewhere and actually like reflect on the areas in your life that you feel like is not working, whether it's relationship wise, whether it's just in your emotional, in your friendships, right? Whatever it is, what's going wrong?
Yeah.
What is it? List out those things. Okay. How is it affecting me? Right? Like bringing awareness. A lot of us don't take the time to pause and actually think about, you know, some of the situations that we find ourselves, right? And taking the time to reflect on it. What's going wrong? What part do I play in it? How is it affecting me? Right? What can I do about it? What am I actually doing about it? Versus just sitting back and folding my hands or just saying that it is what it is, right?
Yeah. Emotions for some people are just intolerable. I'll never forget my supervisor said that to me. She's like, you know, when you're working with somebody and it's just like, how do you not see it? Like you're kind of doing that mental, like, oh my God, like, how do you not see it? She said, right. People have their own beliefs about what it is to even have emotions, to feel emotions. And for some people, it's just, they just cannot tolerate it.
That's true.
Like what you were saying, kind of having to do that, sit down and digging deep is extremely overwhelming and painful. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it.
It doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. We're encouraging you to do it.
Yeah.
But we're also saying that it's hard and we're acknowledging that. But in the long run, it's worth it because you're gonna that person that you're saying you want to love, that you want to care for, you're gonna know who that person is. Right. And you're gonna be able to connect with that person in a deeper and different way. Right. A lot of us even connect with surface levels of ourselves. Yeah. Right. And then we do that with other people, but that's a whole nother topic.
Right.
But it's hard, but it's worth it in the end. Right. Yeah. Nothing. I mean, I know it's a very generic phrase, but it's true. Nothing good comes easy, right? Like you have to put in work in order to get something, a good result at the end, right?
Yeah, that's just the after effect of the aftermath of the microwave society that we live in. Like we just want to right now. I don't want to have to wait for anything. Like
right now.
If it's not right now, I don't want it. And that's just not, that's not going to work in terms of like what it is that we're talking about in terms of your wellness and your mental health. It's not going to cut it.
It's not. Yeah. And I feel like you do such a great job, like on your, like more than a great job on your platform, on your Instagram, like just the information that you put out there for people is like A1. So I just wanted to ask, for you, like what inspired your brand, your platform, like, you know, because it's all about mental wellness, y'all. So go and follow. But what inspired it? Like, how did you even get to this point of being an advocate, you know, for mental health, for mental wellness?
Yeah. Well, so I mentioned earlier, I'm a marriage and family therapist. So this is pretty much just what my life entails. And I think it had to do with my own spiritual awakening that I went through. And then also watching, being kind of like so conscious and aware, watching other people kind of like going through the same thing, or maybe not reach that point of like where I had gone, what I had gone through. And I was like, oh my God, like there's such a need for someone to speak the truth. Like, there's a need for someone to say like, guys, like, you know, like just wait up, like think about some of the things that we find ourselves doing. And pretty much all my life, like I've been like the advice giver. Like I'm always the one that my friends come to and it's like, oh, I have an issue with this. And I'm trying to I call it like a Rubik's Cube, just trying to put it into a perspective for everyone. And everyone has always told me, like, we want to hear you speak. Like, things that you say is like so good. Like, we want to hear it. And for the longest time, I think I just was scared. I wasn't really confident in myself. I'm like, people are going to be like, oh, what is she talking about? Like, she doesn't know anything. So I let like those insecurities kind of hold me back for a long time. So after I had graduated with my master's, I really wanted to do something outside of just seeing clients all day. And I love all my clients, if you're listening. I love all you guys.
She's like, let me put it out there in case they see this.
I do love all of you, each of you.
Yeah.
Like, in like different ways and all that other stuff. But I just think that there's so many people that don't have access to therapy.
Oh, yeah.
And just because you don't doesn't mean that you should be deprived of the information that's out there.
Exactly.
So I wanted to just at least give a little taste of just what I've learned throughout my own journey, what I've learned in school from my readings, and just put it like as a labor of love to people, for them to feel safe on my platform. I get so many DMs all the time, like, oh my God, like when you posted this, like it was like exactly what I was going through. It's just like, how did you know? And I'm like, girl, I've been through it before. Yeah. A lot of what I post on my page has been a lot of the things that I've gone through. So yeah, I want to be able to relate to people and to connect. So I think that's like the driving force behind my brand.
Yeah. And that's so important. Because a lot of people put stuff out there that, like as fellow therapists, I'm sure you've seen some therapy people out there on social media, just putting things that have no like personal touch, or just giving people these advice that is just not
no substance.
Yeah. And I think it's one, it's good to have information. Absolutely. Which a lot of people sometimes don't have access to. Like, even I think when I first started Uprooted, somebody was telling me, you need to define what mental health is. And I'm like, what do you mean I need to define what mental health is? Everybody knows what mental health is. And I had an episode where I literally talked about mental health versus mental illness, and the amount of feedback I got of like, oh, yeah, I didn't know, and especially also coming from like an African background as well, of a lot of people in my community just don't, once they hear mental health, they just think something totally different.
Something's wrong with you. Yeah.
And I feel like it's not even just with Africans. Because the feedback I got from that episode was just mind blowing. So information is good to give people, because like you said, some people don't have access. Some people just don't know when it comes to like just simple mental health practices, mental health tips. Right. What stress looks like. Some people just don't even know. Just aren't informed. But then also putting your own personal like touch to it. Like, what has been you're talking about mental health. What's your mental health experience? Right. Like, what have you, and the same thing with me with Uprooted. Like, everything that I talk about, every single thing that I post, I'm probably currently going through it, or have gone through it, or I've gone through it and I'm going back to it. Because sometimes healing is not linear. It's not like this, I've healed, okay, we're good, I'm going to just move on. Like, you have to keep practicing. So you make a really great point of like, you have to put your personal like experience into it, because people connect with that. People connect with stories. People connect with your journey and the things that you have been through that they can connect to, not just putting information out there. So that's that's really
I'm
important.
not really, I think I'm kind of like I think when I first started my page, I kind of was like a mix of both. But then once I kind of started going more and I saw the feedback of what I was getting when I would put my perspective on things, people were like, oh, okay, I can get with this. I was like, oh, okay, like I can do more of that. So I try to, as always, leave my own personal beliefs and my perspectives, of course, like outside of therapy, but like on my page, like that's just my village, like my people that like agree and like know that they want better for themselves. So
that part. And I feel like you talk a lot about relationships. And given, like you said, it was inspired by your spiritual awakening when you came out of that particular relationship. So I want to ask you if you can talk a little bit about what do you think are some of like the biggest misconceptions when it comes to like when people talk about toxic, we're hearing that a lot now. Toxic relationship, they're toxic. What do you think are some of like the biggest misconceptions when it comes to that?
I think for the most part, it's really just a lot of us, like I said before, being disconnected from ourselves. Mm-hmm. And we are so quick oftentimes to put the blame on what everybody else has done. And that's not to shame people that are actually victims to abuse or anything like that.
No, yeah.
But a lot of the times when we find ourselves in these poisonous relationships, because that's what toxicity is, it's poison. So when we find ourselves in these poisonous relationships, it's like, okay, I'm connected to this person that I'm saying is toxic. So there has to be something about me that's just not in a healthy space right now. I think
that's attracting that. Something about me that's attracting that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I think a lot of the times, like, people look at behaviors and they're just like, that's toxic, that's toxic, that's toxic, that's toxic, that's toxic. And it's just like, I don't really necessarily think that people are toxic. This might blow some of you guys away, but I really don't think that. I don't think that people are toxic, but I think it's the behaviors that they choose to do as an act of self-protection from the trauma that they've been in, that they're now kind of just out here doing whatever, lying, cheating, abusing. Trauma. All of that stuff is trauma.
Speak on it.
It impacts you in so many different ways. So when we see these behaviors, it's like, okay, that person is obviously disconnecting from themselves. Am I disconnected from myself too? Because if I am, I'm going to be with that person too. Disconnected people trying to reenact this trauma and find it in their adulthood when they're still really just wounded children.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think that's the biggest misconception, kind of going back to your original question, is just like, we're always looking at these external factors, like, oh, he did this to me, he cheated on me, he left me for this person, and she did that, and I get it. We're human. We feel those things. That anger, that sadness, that grief. We have to go through that and feel it to get to the opposite side. Mm-hmm. But there is a part that you've done in this song and dance with this person that allowed this to go on for years. Mm-hmm. So I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions, just like putting it on other people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I love what you said about it's the behavior that's toxic. People speak through their actions.
Yeah.
We all speak through our actions. Like, you can say one thing, but it's really what you do that matters. Yeah. And this also goes into what I was talking about earlier, of internal. What's happening internally is going to show on the outside.
Yep.
Like, no matter how much somebody tries to go away from it, avoid it, mask it, whatever, it's going to eventually come out, right? Yeah. That's why we have to work on our insides, right? What's happening, your inside, your emotions, right? Your mental state, right? Yeah. Going and also being able to recognize patterns, because some people can't even recognize patterns. So that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
Aren't even aware of it.
Right. Getting into like these high level intensity of like emotion relationships where it's just like always chaotic, always dysfunctional, and then associating it with bonding and being close to that person. And it's just like, no.
Trauma bonds. Bonds.
Yes.
So it is a form of bonding. It's just trauma bond. It's not a love bond.
Yeah. And a lot of us, like I talked about on my post the other day, we get into these relationships because there's an attachment wound somewhere, whether that came from mom, dad, a sibling, someone else in your family. You find yourself in these relationships that up here is not for me. You don't like, but you feel this chemistry and you feel this pull to this person and you've fallen so in love with them. And it's just like, why would love allow you to betray yourself in that manner? Like really seriously think about it.
Self-worth. And also self-worth too. Yeah. That comes into play. Like self-worth. Sometimes, the way that we see ourselves kind of translates into what we put out there, what we accept into our lives, right?
Yeah.
And then not to segue too much, but then you also have people who, like me, I'm going to put myself on the spot because my community knows that on my podcast, I talk about myself and my experiences because I feel like that's important. You also have people who probably completely avoid relationships or are just too afraid because, you know, of trauma or of, you know, that fear of like rejection, abandonment. So you also have like the opposite spectrum too. And that's also not good. So we're talking to you too, which is me. We're talking to you as well. So you might not be the person that's going from one toxic relationship to the other. You might be someone who's just avoiding relationships in general.
Completely.
And that too also is coming from a place of trauma and being able to recognize those patterns of why am I avoidant of closeness, of intimacy? Where is that coming from? Because you have that piece of it too.
Yeah, I was reading something the other day that talks about like, you know, as humans, we kind of only end up doing two things. Like we either end up running towards the trauma or we run away from the trauma. And that's why, like, when you look at the like attachment theory, there's anxious attachment, then you have secure, and then you have avoidant. That's why it's only those two things. Either I'm chasing after you because I need this from you. I need you to heal this wound, or I'm running away from it because I'm just like, I don't ever want to experience anything like that ever again. So now I've completely just, no. We usually end up doing it, the fight or flight, pretty much. Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. And what would you tell someone who, I guess, what advice would you give someone who, you know, has been through that trauma, that heartbreak? Like, what would you tell them? What would you tell them, about like how they can like heal or what they can do?
Yeah. Start by doing the inner work. And I think a lot of the times when I say like you got to do the work, like you got to like spend some time, you got to sit down somewhere. People are like, oh, how? Like I don't know how to do that. Like, what are you talking about? And it's just like the things that you've kind of just been running away from. And I also saw another amazing post today that talked about how like now the next thing that's out is like everybody's going outside, everybody's doing this. We outside. Distractions. From you taking time to really just hone in on yourself. A lot of people don't like to spend alone time because the stuff that comes out when they're alone is intolerable, like we talked about before.
Yeah, or you keep them busy.
Yeah,
to avoid. Yeah.
It's actually doing the work, having a journal that you write in to talk about what were some of the things that really hurt me in my childhood. Who did my mom and dad compare me to oftentimes? What were some of the things that they demanded of me when I was a child? What were some things that they said to encourage me? Like really dissect what your life has looked like thus far. And that's a part of starting to do the work. I think that's the first step, awareness.
And I'm just going to keep saying it, therapy. If you can go to therapy, go to therapy if you can find a therapist. And in our like previous conversation, you made a comment about needs versus wants. And I want you to talk about that a little bit because that was so good.
Yeah. So I think when you're getting into a relationship, one of the biggest things that I always share with my clients is like, okay, so you're telling me about this new person and you're telling me there's some things that you like about them and then there's some things that you don't like about them. What are your needs in this relationship? And then what are your wants? So your needs are pretty much the things that are like your non-negotiables. Like I need water. I need a laptop computer in order for me to be on this podcast with you. I need shelter. Like those are the things that it's just like, there's no compromising on. Like I need those things. Your wants are things that you are willing to compromise on. Like if I want a guy who is 6'4" and plays basketball or football, like that's a want. Like I don't need that, but that's just something that I desire. And I think a lot of the times we mush those two things in together and then we're just so confused. And then we end up in all of these relationships where it's just like, this person doesn't even align with my values, which is really your needs. They don't align with my values, but you find yourself doing this song and dance because you're not even clear about what it is that you want.
Yeah, majoring on the minors and minor majors. Right?
Yeah.
And if you don't even know what your values are, if you don't even know what needs or wants are, then you can't expect someone else. And that's what I tell people like that I talk to, clients, like people can't read your mind.
Yeah.
Nobody can read your mind.
Right.
Even if you say, oh, well, she should have known or he should have known because of like how I wasn't talking or my body language, or that's all good. Maybe some people can pick that up. But even at the end of the day, whatever is going on for you, nobody's going to know until you communicate it. You have to like communicate. Nobody can read your mind, right? So if you don't even know what you want, if you don't know what your needs versus wants are, if you don't know your values, don't expect the other person to, right? And I think you were talking about it earlier, how sometimes we make excuses not to see what's right in front of us.
Yeah. You know, people's job is not to probe and probe you, like to do these things. Like it's
that too, yeah.
Like you gotta like get to a point where you start to do that. And there was a long time that, and even still now, like I'm not gonna fake like I got it all together. But even still now, like I'll be like, oh, like wow, that person said something that I didn't like. Like they did something that I kind of hurt my feelings. And I'll still have a hard time being like, yeah, so what you did was messed up. I don't like that.
Yeah.
Like it's difficult for me to do it. And sometimes like my friends or like whoever's around me is just like, yeah, just do it. just do it. And oftentimes like we don't speaking up for ourselves, we feel like it's selfish. We were taught that it was bad. So we just don't do it. And then we find ourselves complaining to everybody else with the person that actually is hurting us.
Yeah. And you were just, because I was just listening to your podcast yesterday. So by the way, we're about to wrap this up soon, but by the way, she also has a podcast with one of her friends that y'all need to check out called Unbecoming Podcast, right? I got it right. Okay.
Yes, the Unbecoming podcast.
And you and Soraya, right? Soraya?
Yes.
Yeah. You were just talking about like boundaries, because what you're speaking to is boundaries, and how like sometimes, you know, we put ourselves like this because that's how we were taught to be. Right. And then when it comes to communicating our needs and what's important to us, we can't do that.
Right.
Because it's not normal. We don't see it as normal, right?
Yeah.
That's a great point.
Especially as women, like we're not like raised to speak up for ourselves. Forget about it.
Especially as Black women.
Yeah. We're already basically told that we're going to be shut down.
Exactly.
Like we've just been so conditioned in that way. So us even just trying to be vocal about something, like it makes sense why a lot of us would be really hesitant around that. But it's just like you're doing yourself such a disservice when you don't put those things out there. And you're doing, honestly, the other people around you a disservice too, because I'm pretty sure they're going to be tired of hearing the same thing over.
Exactly. Nobody wins when we don't have like, right?
Yeah.
And as we're talking about, you know, mental wellness, and on this podcast, you know, I like to integrate faith into it. Because for me, that's important. And I feel like anyone that's listening, you know, maybe that's important, maybe it's not, but that's what I'm going to talk about. Cause that's what it is for me, bringing myself. So for you, like what role do you think faith plays in mental wellness?
A huge role. A huge role. That's why whenever, kind of going back to what we were talking about, mental wellness, I don't think about it as just being something that's mental, physical, and emotional. I think it's spiritual too. Like that's a big part for me. So I pray, like I do all of these different things because I want to be connected to an entity higher than myself, to be able to get some of the messages, some of the things that I need to propel me to the next step. I'm only human. It ain't so much I can do on my own. Like I need some type of direction. And whether you get that in the form of praying, meditating, dreams, whatever, that's your way of connecting to something just outside of yourself and being able to propel yourself to move forward. Those times where you're feeling down, how are you going to pick yourself back up? You can't do everything by yourself.
No.
We didn't all just randomly show up here. Like I came from my mother in her womb, and she came from my grandmother, and that all is a part of a really big picture of what we even call life and its journey and the things that you go through, that pain to even get here. So why do we think that we can kind of just go through life like, oh, like, let's just like skip through the field and
I'll figure it out.
Yeah. You're just like completely just like not there. Like it kind of like living in a matrix at that point.
Yeah. And I think that's such a great point. And to add to that, I feel like also bringing faith into mental wellness, it gives a grounding.
Yeah.
Right. And that's how it's been for me. Like my relationship with God, like I can honestly say in the past, like 1 year, like 1 to 2 years, like the best it's ever been in my entire life.
That's awesome.
And it's because I took the religion out of it. Yeah. And I think that has helped like my emotions and my emotional wellness and just me being able to like take a pause and know that I don't have all the answers and that's okay. Yeah. Right. That's what that relationship is for, is to guide me, to give me direction, like you said. And I think faith plays an important role in that, of just giving us a sense of like grounding of, you know, something you can come back to. Right. There's such beauty in that. I just find it. Yeah. So
when you're disciplined, so I think we talked about this last time that we spoke, but it's like when you're disciplined, there's only but so far that you're going to go off the deep end.
Yeah.
Like you might be on the edge, but
you're not going to jump in. You might dip your big toe in.
Right. You might just a toe, just a little bit. Like, oh, this is a little bit hotter than I thought. Like maybe I need to back up a little bit. But I think that like that's what even ended up happening to me, like throughout my years of college and, you know, even a little bit after college. Like that's what I was doing. I was right on the edge, like, okay, let's just see how hot this water's gonna get. and I realized I'm just like, you know, the stuff that people portray on social media and stuff, like, oh, that stuff's an illusion. And there's a void somewhere going on the inside with a lot of people.
People.
Yeah. All these things that we're doing, they're just distractions, like distraction. And don't get caught up in it. Don't just go along with it. When you have a faith, something to ground yourself, something to discipline yourself, you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
You'll be all right.
Yes. Yeah. I told y'all we're getting to the end of this episode now. Now, if you don't follow her, remember what I said, you're gonna ask yourself, hey, what have I been doing? Now you see why. And just to wrap this up, one question, you know, that I ask everyone is to just share one word that you will use to describe, you know, your personal testimony and journey. Because I just feel like our testimonies and journeys are just so important, you know, how we got, because a lot of people, especially in this, we keep mentioning social media because we're millennials, right? In this social media world, everybody shows what they want to show you. They show the highlights. They show there are a few people that actually show you like what they've been through. Yeah. But you don't see that often. You just see, I'm living my best life. I'm doing this. Right? People show you snapshots. That's all you see. So I think it's so important not to compare ourselves to social media. Don't compare yourself to somebody on social media because you don't know their life. You don't know. Yeah, just don't do it. So which is why I really value people's like personal testimonies and their journeys. So for you, what is one word you would use to describe that for you? And can you say a little bit about why?
Yeah. So I would say eye-opening. Like how we talked about earlier, like, you know, me going through just that previous relationship that I was talking about, like, I think that whole thing was just an eye-opening experience for me. And it opened my eyes to this person that I was being, this way that I was living that really wasn't me. Yeah. Like at all. At all. So now I can look back on that girl and say, like, oh, like she just needed a hug. She just needed some love. Like she was going to be fine, but she just needed to like sort some things out. I'm able to now look at her with so much compassion than maybe I would have, you know, 3-4 years ago.
Yeah.
So I really think that it's an eye-opening experience because it really does feel like an awakening. It's like being in a deep sleep for so long in terms of who you think you are to then now awakening into the person that you really are. Like that person that you've been shoving down since you were probably like 5-6 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to find myself, I guess, again, or return to myself.
Return to yourself or find yourself within yourself. And also recognizing that even when we heal and we change and we grow, there's still more healing and changing and growing to come. It's like you're still going to continue to find yourself in different seasons. And I think it's so beautiful. And also the fact that, your healing is now bringing healing to other people.
Yeah.
And that's a powerful thing about healing, right? It's outside of you.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's more than just you. Like it's a ripple effect. And I think, I can clearly see, based on your platform and just everything you're doing and this conversation, that your healing is bringing healing to others. And, and I think that's the beautiful thing about it. So
what's on the inside is going to come out on the outside.
Absolutely.
Even if you try to hide it, it's still there.
Even if you try to hide it. Oh my gosh. I had so much fun with this conversation, Imani. Thank you so much. Please tell everybody where they can find you. Please say all the handles.
Yes. So I am on Instagram. That's my main platform. Imani, IMANI .in touch, INTOUCH. So I am on Instagram. I'm also on LinkedIn as well. You can find me Imani Tutt. I'm on Psychology Today. If you would like to book an appointment with me for therapy.
Okay.
Imani,
where are you based? Because
I'm in New York.
Yeah. So she's in New York because it's different for us in different states, y'all.
Yeah. You can't just go to anybody. Yeah,
you can't go to anybody. They're strict out here.
Yeah. So if you're listening and you're from New York, or even if you're moving to New York, whatever, you can find me on those platforms. My website is still in the works, but once you follow my Instagram, you will be able to keep up with all the things that I have in store. Yeah. So I won't say too much because I got some stuff, but yeah.
And then also follow her podcast.
Unbecoming Podcast _ Unbecoming Podcast _ That way you'll see me and my host, and we put out an episode every Thursday.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for tuning in. Don't forget to, hit that subscribe button. Also make sure you follow, leave reviews, and continue to take care of yourselves. And until we meet again, continue to be well, do well, and live well. Hey community, thank you so much for tuning into the episode today. I know that you got something out of it, so don't forget to leave all your comments, questions, and reflections from the episode. Also, don't forget to subscribe as we continue to build this community together. And also turn on your notifications so that you know when every episode drops. Thank you all so much again, and until we meet again, continue to be well, do well, and live well.